The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. Looks like conference expansion and realignment once again is growing some strong legs and some more concrete news on Oregon and Washington being vetted by the Big Ten and being given the green light. So who's on the good list and who's on the bad list of conference realignment and expansion? Let's talk about it. Well, here we go again, riding on in with Outlaw Posse. The Outlaw Posse is now in effect. That's right, this is the Outlaw of College Football. I can also be found on Twitter at OCF Production. Also, I've added a little something different to this channel. There's a little join button next to the subscribe button. You can actually join and be a part of the Outlaw Posse, and I'm going to think of some benefits and some rewards for those that actually join the paid subscription version of it. It helps support the channel. It's not but $2.99 a month, 75 cents a week. Now, getting right to it here, it seems like Oregon and Washington, from this article that I'm looking at from Heartland Sports via Brett McMurphy, both pretty reliable sources usually. Now, nobody's 100% correct all the time before I get some people in here raising hell saying it's just somebody creating rumors and looking for clickbait and all that crap. But it seems like the Big Ten vetted Oregon and Washington, and they've been given the green light. But the Big Ten continues to say that they're waiting to see what Colorado and Arizona are going to do in regards to the Big 12, which I don't buy. I mean, the elitism and the pomposity, yes, I made up word, the pomposity of the Big Ten just galls me sometimes. They want to be clean of the Pac-12 being basically deep sixed and folded. A conference that's been around since the early 1930s. They don't want the blood on their hands, is what they say. The blood's already on your hand, jackasses. Y'all took Southern Cal and UCLA from them. How can you sit there and say, hey, we don't want to have no blood on our hands, but now that we see the Big 12 is making inroads and getting big contracts, and the fact that they might not just go after Colorado and Arizona, possibly Arizona State and Utah, Big 12 might actually try to take the two plums that we're waiting on. That's Oregon and Washington. So now I think the Big Ten's getting a little antsy and starting to think, hey, we might have to get a little bit of blood on our hands after all. But like I said, the blood's already on your hands, so stop that pompous shit. Because y'all are directly responsible for the demise of the Pac-12, now the Pac-10. If it folds, you are directly responsible. Yes, the Big 12 will be responsible somewhat too, but more of the blood will be, in my view and most other people's views, on your hands. So they're waiting around on Colorado and Arizona, is what they're saying. Brett Yormark actually signed a better deal for the Big 12 than when they had Oklahoma and Texas. So now the Pac-12 is on the schneid here. They're being pressured big time to come up with something. And Colorado and Arizona see this. And they're like, hey, if you can't get close to the $31.5 million that the Big 12 got when they were teetering, and they were almost on their deathbed, and went out and added 4 teams, they're going to dip on Klevakov. If Klevakov can't be a little more aggressive and be a little more outside the box in his thinking, like Brett Yormark's been, Colorado and Arizona are going to start them dominoes falling. And that's what the Big Ten is hoping for and waiting on, because once again, we don't want blood on our hands from destroying our Rose Bowl affair that we had for 70 or 80 years, leading the Pac-12 around like a puppy on a leash. But it's going to happen. And they wouldn't vet Oregon and Washington if they weren't known, if they were not planning on inviting them. They know something already. They know that the Big 12 and Colorado and Arizona are probably about ready to pull the plug on all this, and Colorado and Arizona about to dip. And like I talked about in other podcasts, if those two teams do start those dominoes falling, Arizona State and Utah would probably be next. Now, there's been a lot of murmurings going about and backbiting going around from the Utah fans that, hey, we're too good for the Big 12. We're not going to join the Big 12 because our academic standards are so much higher now. Y'all have only been in a Power 5 conference for 13 years, Utah. Y'all were in a G5 conference for almost, what was it, 70 or 80 years? Off and on. As far back as the WAC, on into the Mountain West. So you might want to back off that a little bit, Utah. And you might want to get on the bandwagon with Colorado and Arizona State and join the Big 12 board before you don't have a membership to any Power 5 league. Because if I was the Big 12 and I heard you saying those things, I would be like, okay, well, fine. We're not going to invite you. Maybe the Big 10 will invite Utah. That's another possibility. Nobody's thought about that, but kind of sort of doubt it. Utah will be back in the Mountain West if they don't get their shit together. But moving on from that, down here it says Brock Heward, who is a Washington alumnus, was at a summit in Arizona where the Big 12 and the Pac-12 were at. And he said the two summits were like night and day, that the enthusiasm and the general goodwill and vibe from the Big 12 summit the day before was pretty off the chain, while the Pac-12 was sort of like a dreary, maybe waiting for a funeral procession type deal. If this does all come to fruition, if the Big Ten gets antsy and decides they don't want to wait and they suddenly don't care about the perception of blood on their hands and they decide to go ahead and invite Oregon and Washington, I very much likely think that the shoe will be reversed a little bit, and at that point Colorado and Arizona will go ahead and join the Big 12, and I think Arizona State and Utah will follow. So where does that leave the Pac-12? It leaves them nowhere. Unless they plan on inviting half the Mountain West and putting a Pac-12 mask on, I just don't know if the other conferences are going to allow the Pac-12 to continue having their Power 5 status if 6 teams from that conference leave in the next year. If I was other conferences, I wouldn't have no part of that. I would delegate them down to a G5 conference at that point. Because at that point, all you got left is Stanford, California, Oregon State, and Washington State, right? It's not a very good look. Stanford and California, they too may end up getting a Big Ten invite. Now, that could happen as well. But I'm starting to think it might not. I'm starting to think that Stanford and California may end up going independent, joining the Ivy League. I know that sounds crazy, or something like that. Oregon and Washington State, like I said, they want to go out and invite half the Mountain West to join their conference. Maybe that'll play out. Maybe people will be okay with that. But I just don't see it happening, man. I think the Pac-12 will be closed down. And if they're not, then they're going to lose their Power 5 status at that point. But that's the news I got today, that Oregon and Washington have been vetted, which is a big deal. So you guys and gals tell me now what you think about all this. What scenarios do you have in mind? The whole SMU San Diego State thing. San Diego State's got to feel like shit. Because they're like, man, we're finally going to get a Power 5 invite. We're going to finally be a part of a Power 5 conference. And now they're not. Because, like I said, if this happens, if 6 teams leave the Pac-12, more than likely they're going to lose the Power 5 status. And San Diego State's just going to be right back where they were, just under a different label. But drop it in the comments section. Let me know what you think about all this. Also, like I said, there's now a join button. You can join the Outlaw Posse. I'm going to think of some benefits and some stuff I can do to reward people for being a part of the Outlaw Posse. It's not but $2.99 a month, 75 cents a week. Also, there's a little heart down here. If you just want to make a one-time donation, just throw that in the coffers there. I'll also start doing shout-outs for that. And like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel, The Big Four. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams, classes now officially dismissed.